Hello and welcome to $100 Plus Mileage. On this podcast, we talk about New Hampshire bills that don't always make the headlines but still might have an impact on you. Usually we like to focus on bills that are alive and well, especially ones that have an upcoming public hearing for you to take part in. We're doing things a little differently this week, but first, I'm Anna Brown, Director of Research and Analysis for Citizens Count.
And I'm Mike Dunbar, Content Editor for Citizens Count. That's right, Anna. We've gathered here today to pay respects to a few of the bills that have died in the legislature so far this year. Every year, New Hampshire legislators consider over 1,000 bills. About two-thirds of them don't survive long enough to make it to the governor's desk. There are plenty of reasons for this. Lawmakers may feel that the proposed law would have unintended consequences, or that proposals need to be given more thought, or there might just be a clash of party ideals. As we approach the halfway point of this legislative session, let's pause to remember some of the bills that have been killed this year. Let's start with a pretty intense one, though, CACR 20. This one had to do with New Hampshire seceding from the United States.
Yes, our elected representatives have decided that New Hampshire won't be seceding from the Union this year. Civil War officially postponed. Well, hopefully. CACR 20 was a constitutional amendment that would have seen New Hampshire exit the Union if the national debt reached $40 trillion. Right now, it is over $34 trillion. New Hampshire would then proceed as a sovereign nation. The House committee that considered the bill gave it a unanimous thumbs down in January, saying that secession is not a solution to the struggles we face. 341 representatives went on to vote against the bill as well, while 24 voted in favor.
I think we can definitely all agree that at this point, the national debt has gotten unsustainable, but still, I'm not exactly sure how little old New Hampshire would fare as a sovereign nation. Let's set that aside. What other bills have met their demise this year?
I got another one for you. HB 1022, a bill to decriminalize prostitution in New Hampshire, also defeated. It was intended to reduce penalties faced by sex workers, but detractors feared the legislation would make New Hampshire a haven for child sex trafficking. Basically, legal sex work would make it easier to hide the dark, really illegal stuff. Well, there were no active sex workers present at the hearing. One member who claimed to have spoken with several Manchester sex workers said they were against the bill.
Right. We've seen this debate in New Hampshire before. The same arguments do play out, although it's interesting that the sex workers would be against the legalization of prostitution. So you never know what the arguments are going to be. I suspect we haven't seen the last of that proposal, but okay, what else have we got?
There's an interesting debate around HB 1022, and it again comes down to concern over unintended consequences. This bill would have allowed courts to order child support for a fetus, struck down in February. The bill text stated, child support may be ordered to include the period of time of pregnancy starting at conception. Support may include obligations for the typical costs of pregnancy, including medical care. Notwithstanding any other law, the child support order can apply retroactively to include the period of pregnancy. Opponents worried that this could open the door to abortion restrictions in the state, maybe even limiting the right of sexual assault victims to get an abortion.
That's right. And I know there were also concerns about determining paternity before a woman has given birth to the child. But okay, the next one doesn't sound controversial, but I hear people were fired up about houseboats.
Yes, this was one that definitely played out much more dramatically than I thought. HB 1049 would have repealed a prohibition against mooring houseboats overnight in areas not owned or leased by the boat owner. An overnight boat would need to have sleeping facilities and sanitation that could be pumped or dumped on land. The committee felt the bill was too broad and could open inland waterways to houseboats parked indefinitely as housing, short-term rentals, or commercial enterprises. This one was surprisingly controversial, as I said. Representative Candace Gibbons reported hundreds of emails on this bill.
Fascinating. All right, Anna, quick pause. Would you ever go for the houseboat life?
In this housing market, Mike, I've been browsing houseboats online for years, but big problem, I get seasick. So no, I could not live on a houseboat for life.
All right, I'll throw this last one out here, but be warned, it's a little bit horrifying. The House also killed HB 1599, which would allow artificial intelligence as self-defense. While it sounds like something out of science fiction, proponents argued that the Department of Defense is working hard at developing this technology, and therefore New Hampshire should clarify its own laws on the matter. Opponents included the New Hampshire State Police, who expressed understandable concerns over determining culpability if an autonomous machine uses force against a human being. The committee considering the bill acknowledged there may come a time when it is safe and reasonable for private owners to deploy such devices for self defense, but the possible unintended consequences of such a law were too great right now. That seems like an understatement. I'm imagining in a world of robot bodyguards patrolling people's front lawns, and I'm not sure that's one I want to live in. Although I will say an army of killer robots might help if New Hampshire decides to become a sovereign nation. Maybe there's a connection. I don't know.
Actually, I was researching this bill a few months ago when I was very curious about the AI laws coming around. And I don't think the sponsor was that far down the rabbit hole. More like, if there's an attempted carjacking, can I make my self driving car hit the guy with the gun? And also, is it even possible for a driver to force a car to hit a guy with a gun? I would not be surprised if this issue comes back another year because it's really only the beginning with AI laws. Anyway, we don't have time to cover every last bill that shuffled off this mortal coil in 2024, but let's give a quick RIP to these other bills that I would love to talk about someday. HB 113, getting rid of state fitness standards for police, that was killed in the House. HB 434, allowing drones in state parks for a $25 fee, killed in the House. HB 1324, permitting green burials. That was sent to interim study, which is kind of a polite way to kill a bill in an election year, but also means it might come back if they really do study it and like the ideas. And SB 194, which would let underage college students taste wine in class. That was killed in the Senate.
Okay, well, remember, New Hampshire, these bills may have gone, but they're definitely not forgotten. In fact, while these bills are done for 2024, any of them could come back to life in the coming years. I've seen plenty of zombie bills in my time here at Citizens Count, and sometimes they do make it across the finish line. Do you have an opinion on any of these proposals? Learn how you can make your voice heard in the state legislature using our advocacy toolkit by visiting citizenscount.org/how-2/advocate. All right, Anna, that wraps it up, which means it's time for our closing segment, only in New Hampshire. What do you have for us?
Well, no bill sponsor likes seeing their bill die in the legislature, but it turns out there is a fate worse than death for legislation. Sometimes legislators don't just kill a bill, but instead transform it through amendments into something radically different than its sponsor ever intended. Something Frankenstein metaphor, we seem to have gone down a horror movie theme. Anyway, this happened to HB 1264 back in 2014. Rep. J.R. Hole introduced a bill that would have allowed non-residents who live in states that don't require a license to carry a loaded handgun to forgo getting a license to carry in New Hampshire. Rather than immediately passing or killing the bill, the committee rewrote it. The bill, as amended, would have established a commission to study the effects of firearm legislation on firearms violence, explore options to strengthen the background check system, determine whether existing penalties for the illegal use of a firearm were sufficient, and review whether current laws governing concealed carry licenses allowing non-residents to carry a loaded gun in this state should be changed. In other words, rather than expanding the ability to carry firearms in the state, it would have done the opposite. And there was good news for Rep. Hull, though. The rewritten bill ultimately died, and in 2017, it became legal for both residents and non-residents to carry a pistol or revolver in New Hampshire without a license.
I love reading between the lines with these bills because on the surface a lot of the legislative language seems really dry, but I kind of just love the passive aggression of the committee in that one, just being like, actually, not only are we not going to pass this right away, we're going to have it be the opposite of what you intended it to be.
Yeah, you and I talked about this, and a lot of times they will, well, not a lot, but in the context of thousands of bills, but a lot in terms of not uncommon every year. They will completely rewrite a bill. And sometimes they will also rewrite a bill to incorporate a different bill that got killed somewhere else. And they're like, well, we still think this is a good idea. So we're going to put this here to kind of force the other side, whether it's the House or the Senate, to reconsider this. But this one has always stuck out in my mind because it was so opposite what the original intention was. And there was debate about that on the floor, frankly, people saying this goes too far outside the rules because you're supposed to limit it to quote unquote germane amendments, which is very subjective. So it does relate to gun laws still, but the intent is different. So as you say, there is so frequently a story behind the legalese if you know where to look.
Yeah, I wonder if in that moment, Representative Hull was like, oh God, why did I bring it up? Now,
It's like when you're at family dinner table and it's like someone mentions Trump and you're like, oh no, why did we say that?
Just trying to get my Thanksgiving on. All right, that wraps it up for this episode of $100 plus mileage. But you can find more information and episodes at citizenscount.org. This podcast is made possible by a generous grant from Northeast Delta Dental. We'd also like to thank Franklin Pierce University for producing and the Granite State News Collaborative for hosting. Our theme music is composed by me, Mike Dunbar. And lastly, we thank you for giving us a listen and thinking about how you can be part of what makes New Hampshire by the people, for the people.